So thank you all for joining us this evening for a very important topic as we embark on a new school year, cultivating student engagement in learning and school. My name is Suvarna Bhopale, and I've been serving as a trustee for the Belmont Redwood Shores School District for the past 9 years. I am so pleased to have co-hosting with me tonight, Shawneece Stevenson, who is a trustee with the Sequoia Union High School District. Now, to let you know, the format of this meeting will be a conversation, not a lecture. We have some prepared questions based on the questions submitted when you all registered and your areas of interest. But if you have further questions or comments, please do type them into the chat or raise your virtual Zoom hand to be recognized. So before we begin, I'm going to invite Ms. Shawneece Stevenson to introduce herself and give some background about her interest in cultivating student engagement.
Thank you so much. I'm going to introduce myself. I'm going to take a step back. I'm definitely part of the school board, but before our school board, I was just a parent. And that's the most important thing for me. I represent Area E, which covers the city of East Palo Alto, the Bellhaven community in Menlo Park, parts of North Fair Oaks, and a small part of Redwood City and that corridor that's there. And so these are students who typically attend Ravenswood School District and Redwood City School District, and maybe some private schools in the area. And so one of the reasons why I'm so excited to be here is that student engagement is so important to me as a parent whose last baby graduated last year. And feel like I have a little bit more breathing room around being able to talk about this, especially having 3 different children with 3 different needs, from medical conditions to actual learning disabilities to more other issues that may have resulted in special supports at the school through the IEP services process. So I come from a different lens of what engagement looks like, and my students having wonderful experiences and sometimes not having wonderful experiences. So I'm really speaking from a parent perspective. And then if there's questions around the school district, I'll try my best to answer some of those questions. So I wanted to share that with you. And then just professionally, I'm a social worker in the community. I work at a school that does health and education integration. I also work for another organization that does health inequities, and really how to address social determinants of health in communities of color and communities that don't receive the information, and really how to support them and really improve the health of all. So just wanted to make sure you know all those parts of my identity, which are really important to me.
Thanks so much for sharing that, Shawneece. So we have a wealth of information and expertise in you. So I want to ask you, first of all, could you share an anecdote or two from either your own experience as a parent or as a trustee about the importance of student engagement?
I think student trustee, I'm sorry, that was in my mind, but that student engagement is really important to me because it means a varying of things, but I think the definition which you put forward, Suvarna, and maybe we can put that definition in the chat because I think it's important to have the same definition, which is this degree of attention, curiosity, and interest, and optimism and passion that the students show when they are learning or being taught, meaning that it's the first baseline that kids are showing up, right? And so sometimes students have a hard time showing up for many different reasons. Maybe it's not a place that they feel comfortable with. Maybe that's not a place where they feel seen. Maybe they're just dealing with life issues that young people have to deal with, like working or parents sick or something like that. And so there's all these different elements, but once you get past some of those, how do students, and I'm trying not to use kids. And so if if I say kids too much, Suvarna, please tell me, don't say that anymore.
I do the same.
I'm okay with correction. But young people, how they show up, how they want to be interested in curriculum. So For example, when we think about our board and kind of some of the decisions that we made, sometimes we have to respond to what regulations and what the state says, and then how we implement it at the school level, as you know, being on a board as well. And sometimes we have to do other things that aren't necessarily because of what, you know, Code of Ed has told us, but more so what's right for our community. So when I think of like interest, we, you know, the ethnic studies is a huge piece of it. I know in parallel process, I did not know we were doing the ethnic studies process when I wasn't on board, but my student really struggled with not seeing themselves in curriculum. They were struggling with, where's my voice? My student was struggling with, where do I fit in, right? And so that was actually one of the things I started sharing with my principal as a quote unquote complaint, right? And it's okay to have complaints. It's okay to share your concerns. And mine was done in a way of in partnership, right? And so wanted to talk about a little bit more about engaging students, because I was starting to see some disengagement with my students. And so at that same time, there was this parallel process that was happening. So when ethnic studies, what I did know was some of it was generated by alumni students, some of it was supported by the state mandate. And when we began to talk about ethnic studies, it really created a conversation in the community around, should we have it, should we not? Oh, what's going to happen? Who is it going to impact? Who will not be in there? You know, all these different pieces. But what we are learning is that some people didn't have some of their stories told in the curriculum that we had. So not taking away another curriculum, but really creating a layer around that that will be engaging. And I think that that is really powerful, because we're going to live in a diverse world, right? And so I get overwhelmed with diversity sometimes, because it's like, it's so beautiful and I don't know everything, right? So I have to engage with it in order to understand it and to better work with it, especially in the professional world, when you leave high school, when you go to college. And I think that was one of the things that was a shock for me, going to college as a first generation college student, and being able to say, oh my God, there's all these walks of life, right? And how do I interact with it? And being a social worker, I don't always have a choice about who I work with and who I don't. And so having something like ethnic studies helps you to see things from not only what communities struggle with, but also the beauty of what comes out of the work and the ideas of what people are dealing with, and kind of what the beauty of their culture is. So that's one example.
That's wonderful. And I just want to underscore a couple of things you said about the ethnic studies curriculum. So what I thought was really novel that the Sequoia district has done is that ethnic studies requirement for ninth graders actually came about, as you said, from community voices. But the curriculum, as I understand it, was really teacher driven from the grassroots and really tailored for the Sequoia community, which I think is really wonderful. That really underscores the community voice, right? And then the other thing you talked about is the ethnic studies curriculum allowing students to sort of see themselves, and how powerful that is when we talk about, you know, optimism, passion, curiosity in school, and that relating to engagement. You can see how that really is the pathway.
Absolutely.
And speaking of pathways, let me ask you about the career pathways that Sequoia has, because this is when we're talking about engagement. And, you know, obviously students are going to high school to get their high school degree, but, you know, many of them are thinking beyond that: college, graduate school, et cetera. And so when we're talking about pathways in Sequoia, you know, folks may know there's biotech, business, media arts, computer science, health, Green Academy. When the board was thinking about those pathways, give us a sense of what was the sort of underpinning of that.
I'm not quite sure when the academies were developed, but let me take a step back and say, what did I learn at the end? At the end of last year, we go to graduations as a board. whenever I went to Carmont's Avid graduation, or whether I went to the Computer Academy at graduation at MA, because my daughter graduated from that program. Whoop, whoop. Anyhow, or I went to learn more about the Biotech Academy that's at Carmont, or the Green Academy that's at Woodside, and then all the Avid programs. What we learned was that the students not only learned what they wanted to learn, but they're also small high schools within high schools. And so as we think about that and how students need to be connected, one of the 40 developmental assets is that for youth, which are the things that they need to feel successful and belonging, is that they are connected, right? And so I think that they're doing things that are meaningful and applicable. That's kind of what Bonnie Hanses, our associate superintendent of educational service, she said that it's meaningful, that is all these things. That's what makes things engaging. And so when you have these academies, it allows you to go a little bit deeper. It also allows you, depending on the academy that you're in, you can actually get college credit. So like there's a benefit at the end of it as well, when students are working through that. And I think that it helps students to kind of see themselves beyond, right? As a first generation college student, I took all the intro classes, intro to social work, intro to education, intro, like all these, because I really didn't know where I landed. In that first year, you should be trying to figure out in college who and what you want to be. I think there's a lot of push to figure it out before you're 18, which I don't agree with, but I do believe that that exploration should be happening in high schools, because if you don't have an example in front of you, if everybody's in your family's a lawyer, well, you may not know that doctor is an option, or that owning a company is an option, or learning about sustainability is an option, right? So these allow them to get those experiences and try something new.
Absolutely. I couldn't have said it better. So you were talking about sort of navigating the system and, being a first generation going to college. That must have been a little bit challenging, right? And so what advice would you have for students or parents who are in that same position where they're having difficulty navigating the system or advocating for themselves?
Can you share a little bit more? Are you talking specifically about how to find their place in high school? Are you trying to find services, or?
I mean, specifically, just sort of trying to find their place.
Find their place. I think that is one of the biggest challenges that our students have. One of my learners and scholars in my family didn't find their place until junior year. I had another one who really found their place their senior year. So to me, if connection really is a part of it, if I say it's part of the 5 protective factors for students and families, which is a model that's out there that's more social work based and family oriented, if connection and belonging is part of that, if developmental assets is having relationships and deep relationships and are civically engaged and all those things, that I don't want students to wait to their junior and senior year to find their place. Because then you're like, what happened to high school? I was just getting in my groove, right? And that's been one of the challenges we've heard with COVID, right? But what I am learning, and as a parent, but in others, is that getting connected early is really important, as early as possible, right? It's never too late. So freshman year, you're kind of like, where am I? What am I supposed to be doing? And where's the bathroom? That's all I need to know, and how to unlock my lock, right? But we really want to go, after that is all done, and understanding your campus, you really should start experiencing things, clubs, for example, extracurricular, theater, sports. Some people are big sports people, but I wasn't. So like doing something else is okay as well. Being a part of a youth leadership group, being a part of a student advisory committee, to the superintendent, or being a student rep through your school council or something like that, being a part of your LCAP process, right? Those things help you to be a part and be connected. And then you become a resource for yourself and for others, but you can't do it unless you jump in and start being a part of that. And I think that can come with the encouragement of parents, encouragement of their counselors and their peers, and students can start their own clubs.
That's terrific. I want to go back because this is your professional background, because you've mentioned the five, did I get it right? The 5 developmental factors?
The 5 protective factors and the 40 developmental assets.
Okay, thank you.
I'll put that in the chat while we're talking.
Perfect. Could you just expand a little bit on the 5 protective factors? I think that's so interesting.
So the 5 protective factors really are what help young people to really get what they need from their family and their community. And the 5 developmental factors are really, I'm going to put them here and I'm going to write them down as for 5 protective factors. Really are being able to have connections, so moving people out of social isolation. That is directly related to our students and our families. If families and people don't feel connected, then it's like a black hole. School is just a place to go. It feels like a building. There's other professionals in the place. I know we have the College of San Mateo, the College District here. We know we have FCE here. So if I'm saying things wrong, chime in, correct me. But connection is one of them, right? Being able to do social emotional learning, right? And supporting that. And then, sorry, I can't type and talk. Social and emotional learning. And then some of the other factors that go into this is really parents are supported and families are getting the resources that they need, concrete support. So I think that's about 5 of them. But I think the one that really supports a lot of what we do, if you look at young people and developmental assets, it's like the 40 things that they need. I'm not going to go through all 40 of those, of course, because that's not why I'm here. But like, it talks a lot about support, empowerment, boundaries and expectations, construction of time, commitment to learning, positive values, social competencies, positive identity, all these different factors, and where schools come into place. And you tell me, I have a good person on here from FCE, Elizabeth, you tell me if I'm on the right world. I know you've done a lot of research around this, but like, students need to be connected. One of the things that I do, and I'll stop here, is I'm part of the Bay Area Community Health Advisory Council. We did a mental health project, video project around what do kids learn, students, young people learn from being in COVID? What tools did you develop? Not just how bad it was, which is true. And sometimes we have aha moments when we go through adversities. We realize there was something we didn't know about ourselves that really helped us get through. And we have a young person that did something. He's actually from Carmine. And he says, man, I really didn't like how my parents told me to get connected and cut off the TV, right? And he said, I started joining the robotics club and this, he said, because my mother told me to. And he says, but it actually was pretty good. I was like, right? So there's something about connecting to others, because I do think that is important. If you don't have a place where you feel belonging, or you don't have a relationship with one adult at the school becomes not a safe place for you. And safe place is not always how people are treating you, but also how you feel.
Absolutely. And I think that point you just made about having one caring adult at least, so important. So let me ask you, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but I will. So could you share what the board is doing, or what would you like to see the Sequoia board doing more of to further student engagement?
I would love for us to hear the voices of students more. I think I actually talked to our superintendent, and everybody's, we have 5 folks. It's like a big a project, having 5 people agree and move forward. So I want to say I'm speaking from a Shawneece perspective, not a board perspective, but I would like us to see more student engagement in our board, right? I had the pleasure of meeting with our 2 student trustees who applied and got accepted, one from Middle College, one from Carmont, if your Carmont is in the house, but each site has a student rep. And I was sitting on my seat. I actually got so excited because they were like, we want to talk about mental health. We want to do that. These are the 3 legacies that I'm like, well, all right, y'all come with y'all 3 legacies. I'm so excited, right? Not saying I will agree. It's just the fact that your voice is there, right? And I think student engagement is really important. I think some of that got a little tested a little bit through COVID. Because we still had so many structural things of trying to reopen school and kids get used to coming back to school, and even with the surge that happened, it really tested all our ideas, right? And so student voices are really important. I think as a parent who is a recovering hovering parent, that I've learned through my own reflection of this last year that I could listen more, right? And listen and respond. Now, I may not always agree, but I need to listen to my student more. And there are things that happen when you listen to your student. For me, during COVID was a lot of racial reckoning, and my student was really being impacted, right? And so without my permission and without my knowledge, leading, a Black Lives Matter walk in my community protest, that's not something I would have put in my box for her to do, right? Or my other child saying, hey, it's through the relationships of my friends we are having these conversations, right? Or them saying, I really don't like the food at my school, or I really want to do something about climate change. There's something about sitting back and listening, right? And being a coach versus the type of parent I did when they were in elementary. I was really guiding a lot. I was doing versus, all right, I got to trust that they have it in them and I can follow their lead a little bit and still be giving our values and our ideas. But that really what I'm helping them to do in the safety of high school, where adults are still there, not college, high school, that they can do this within the love and care and the relationships of adults.
Thank you for that. I'm really glad that you highlighted the student trustees, right? And how excited you were for their participation. We did have an audience question from Anthony Eng. His question was, what civic engagement opportunities are available in the Sequoia district? And I have a little bit of input on that, but I want you to start us off first.
When you say civic engagement, you always have a place at the table. And there's requirements by the state that really govern some of that. One of them is there's a decision-making body at each site called the site council. They call it something a little bit different. You can always go to your parent, was your parent liaison or your principal or vice principal or your advisor saying, hey, that's where we have what is called the local decision-making group that really does what is called the LCAP, which helps guide kind of what our curriculum looks like, where we put the money and all that kind of stuff. And so that we're going to be out in 10 minutes.
Yes.
So I'm going to hurry up, but that's a place. And then your student council, as well as you can always apply to be a part of the student advisory committee that advises the superintendent. And you also have your community partnerships that come into play. For us in East Palo Alto, that's one East Palo Alto, but Ravenswood, Redwood City, it may be Redwood City 2020, Redwood City Together, but there might be other opportunities that contribute. So there.
Perfect. And I'll just add in that there are leadership courses starting even in ninth grade. There's volunteer internship job opportunities as well that amazing career services department sends out. And I'm just going to give a quick plug for something that I volunteer for, which is mock trial. I've been a coach, and that's a great way for students to learn public speaking and those student engagement opportunities as well. So we have.
Can I share one more?
Sure.
For those individuals, regardless of what community you're in, but also urban debaters, for those who aren't doing mock trial. So
thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. So we have a question from a student. What strategies would you suggest for maintaining a positive outlook and staying motivated throughout the school year from an academic perspective? And this is a really good question, especially as we're, still dealing with COVID. Wonder what your thoughts are on that.
Positive attitude is very difficult to have when we don't know. Sometimes you have to be at home sick and stuff like that, and that interrupts our academics. I would say first talk to your parents, right? Talk about one of the things that we figured out, at least I figured out with my own student, is that we had to talk around the dinner table. What she was dealing with is what I was dealing with at work. And then when it got needing more support, we went and asked the school for some help, right? So there might be support groups, there might not be online groups. You might need to talk to someone about how to work with a certain teacher because maybe the style isn't working for you, and learning your voice of advocacy, your parent coaching you how to talk to them first, because that's what districts want you to do, because you're learning to use your voice and you can only do that through practice. And then if that doesn't work, then you bring your parent along or you talk to your academic counselor. But staying motivated is really difficult. But I say find some way to help with some of the resilience piece. Find something that you really love that balance out some of the really hard things.
Thank you. That was a great answer. I do want to note that we have Anthony from Civic Leadership USA, which he's the one who asked the question about engagement and student engagement and civic engagement specifically. So that might be an opportunity for partnership with the district in the future. I think that might be interesting. At this point, we're going to just open it up for, like I said, anyone in the chat. If you have questions, please feel free, or you can raise your Zoom hand. And Shawneece has also graciously put her email in the chat as well.
Oh, we have one person. I think it's Supriti.
Oh, go ahead, Preeti.
So for incoming ninth graders like myself who are interested in either getting into clubs or extracurriculars, how do we find out which clubs are available to us, but then also how to sign up for those clubs and extracurriculars?
Every school does it differently, but I do know that there is a student rush club when they actually have students sign up for clubs. But you also can go on your website. They will have a list of student clubs, whether or not they're active. It depends on if they're continuing, because it's also student driven and you need an advisor. If you find that there's nothing there, you can always start your own. I always remember when my student was first coming in, my oldest was coming in, and there was the donut club. And I'm like, what is that? Right. So it's whatever your interest is. And then getting an advisor, and they will help you. Talk to your student counselor, talk to a teacher that you really connect with, and they can tell you how those things happen.
So I have a question for you, Shawneece. You talked about the student trustees. If we have some civically minded students here who want to participate in that way, what would they do? Do they contact their principal or the district, or how does that work for the application?
I think, I really didn't understand the student trustees. So I got on the board. I was like, what? We got student trustees and we have student advisory committee. So I'm still learning what that looks like. Typically, my understanding is with the student advisory committee doesn't mean that you're a student trustee, that you have direct link to the advisor. And those are facilitated by the student advisory the student trustees, is that if you can be nominated, but I think if you are excited, go talk to your principal and say, hey, how do I get on that student advisory group? I would say also, if you have questions, you can email the board. I'm going to put her name here, Laura Laus, which is the board's executive support. And she can tell you how to do that at your school, who to contact, those kinds of things. You can apply. We'd love to have you if there's an opening. Every year they get a new student advisory group. Sometimes we pull a lot of students that have been in honors class, but we also want students who are not in honors class, or students who are like, hey, I'm in part of the Green Academy, or whatever the case may be, or middle college or whatever. We want all students to feel comfortable being a part of that body.
Terrific. And then I'm going to, because we have just about 3 minutes, if there are, again, any other questions, please put them in the chat. But I want to give you a chance, Shawneece, to just sort of give some sort of closing thoughts, or what your hope would be for, the future as we are embarking on this new school year in terms of student engagement.
What I'm embarking on is that the things that are really important to me one is that equity, where students from all different walks of life are getting what they need at school. And being a diverse school of 10,000 students, 9 communities, it is very different than just, as you know, being at Belmont Redwood Shores. Our population is just different. It's expanded, right? So it's not horrible. There's no value to it. It's just different, right? And so that creates a level of beauty and challenge. And so I hope that all students get what they need, what they uniquely need at their school. And then the bigger piece is I really want students to have more of a voice. And I think our district does a really good job of that through the LCAP process and things of that sort. But I also want to be sure that the voices are being heard. And so what does that mean? That's elevating the voices and making sure that voices are at the table to help make those decisions. So that's really important to me. The other piece that's really important to me, that we have diverse learners. And so when I think of that, I think of my 3 children, right? One that had a medical condition that really created some challenges for her in her learning and accessing curriculum and things of that sort, that somehow those students are seen in the process, not as a classroom over here, but as an integration in the classroom. And I know that's a challenge for our teachers because there's just differentiation that needs to happen in the classroom, but also that curriculum is meaningful and that they have the services and the tools that they need to access that curriculum, so that when they walk away, they're sure about who they are. They know what their options are. They're excited about the next step of their life. They're going to have a little fear and a little worry and anxiety. We all have that before we start a new job or new journey. I was nervous, right? Still nervous. But that doesn't keep me or you from going into that next step of life.
Perfect. That's just such a wonderful way to wrap up this session. I want to thank Shawneece Stevenson so much for her time tonight and just giving us a little bit of insight into student engagement and the ways that students can feel more comfortable in the school climate. I know this is going to be a continuing conversation. I hope Shawneece joins us again. And we will continue the conversation. And thank you all for joining. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Good night.
Bye.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jim.